The year is 1441. Margery Jourdemayne stands bound, her body weakened from days of torment. Her head has been shaven to strip her of dignity, leaving her exposed and humiliated before the mob. The whip marks still cut across her skin, raw reminders of the punishment that preceded her execution. Before she was paraded through the streets as a witch, Margery Jourdemayne was known simply as a woman of remedies. But in 15th century England, such knowledge was a double-edged sword. Healing could so easily be twisted into sorcery. A simple charm for love became, in the eyes of churchmen, a pact with the devil. Margery's reputation grew not as a physician, but as a woman who dealt with unseen forces. She was called the Witch of Eye. The name clung to her, shaping how others spoke of her. Her reputation as the Witch of Eye had already drawn suspicion, and it was only a matter of time before the authorities acted. She was accused of practicing sorcery, a charge broad enough to cover almost anything. For Margery, this meant humiliation. Her penance was public. She was forced to admit her guilt, stripped of dignity, and warned that her life would be forfeit if she were ever caught again. From that day onward, she lived under suspicion. To her neighbors, she was now marked. The name which no longer lingered as rumor, it had been sealed by official judgment. Every herb she sold, every cure she offered, became a risk. And to the authorities, she was no longer a simple woman of Stepney. She was a criminal on borrowed time. This first arrest should have been the end of her story, a warning that drove her into silence. But history would not allow that. For in the years ahead, Margery would be pulled into something far more dangerous than charms and potions, a conspiracy that reached the highest ranks of England's nobility. At the center of the storm was Eleanor Cobham, Duchess of Gloucester. Ambitious, calculating, and eager to rise above her station. When the conspiracy was uncovered in 1441, Eleanor Cobham's allies were swiftly rounded up. Clerics and scholars were imprisoned, disgraced, or condemned. But Margery Jourdemayne faced the harshest fate. She was not a noble who might plead for mercy. She was a common woman, already judged once for witchcraft. To the crown, she was expendable and useful as an example. What had begun as whispered rituals in private chambers exploded into a scandal that shook the court. For Margery, it sealed her doom. The charge was no longer simple sorcery. It was treason through witchcraft, a crime punishable only by the most brutal of deaths. When Margery Jourdemayne was brought to trial in 1441, the outcome was already decided. England's courts in cases of witchcraft and treason were not places of truth, they were stages for spectacle, built to reinforce the power of crown and church. Her past conviction gave the judges all they needed. She was a repeat offender, a woman who had once confessed and been spared, now accused of falling back into forbidden practices. No defense could save her. The court did not seek evidence. It sought submission, humiliation, and a final judgment that would silence doubts. The punishments began even before the sentence was read. Her head was shaved, an act meant to strip her of identity, dignity, and womanhood itself. A woman's hair was a symbol of honor, but for Margery, it was torn away, leaving her bare and degraded before her accusers. She was whipped publicly, her body lashed until her skin carried the marks of her disgrace. Each strike was a reminder not just of her alleged crime, but of the power wielded over her by those who branded her a witch. She was forced to endure the pain in silence, while the crowd looked on, some jeering, others whispering, but all witnessing the message: this is the price of defiance. When the charges were declared, they went beyond witchcraft. The court named her a conspirator in treason, a woman who had dabbled in sorcery to threaten the life of the king. This made her no longer just an outcast healer, it made her an enemy of the realm. There was no mercy. The verdict was inevitable. She was condemned to die at the stake, burned alive before the people of London. It was not only a punishment but a warning, a performance designed to terrify anyone who might dare to seek knowledge beyond the church or question the authority of the king. For Margery Jourdemayne, the trial was not about guilt or innocence. It was about power-crushing weakness, about silencing a woman whose skills had made her dangerous in the eyes of a fearful society. The sentence was passed. Her fate was sealed. The morning of her execution, Smithfield was already alive with anticipation. This open ground outside the city walls had long been a place of death where heretics, traitors, and condemned criminals met their end under the eyes of the crowd. For the people of London, it was both punishment and spectacle, a grim theatre where fear was fed and authority displayed its strength. Margery Jourdemayne was led forward, her body weakened by whipping, her head bare from the shaving meant to shame her. She was no noble woman spared the cruelty of the crowd. She was a commoner, dragged to the stake as an object of ridicule and warning. The executioners bound her to the wooden post, ropes tightening against her arms and legs. At her feet, the pyre was prepared with ruthless care, bundles of dry faggots stacked to burn hot, yet arranged so the flames would rise slowly. The purpose was not only death but agony. Around her, the crowd pressed closer. Some came to jeer, others to pray, many simply to watch. In an age when fear of witches mingled with hunger for spectacle, Margery's death promised both. She was the Witch of Ai, the woman said to have dealt in charms and prophecies, now condemned as a traitor against the king himself. When the torch was brought forward, silence fell for a brief, chilling moment. Then, as the fire caught, the roar of the crowd rose to meet it. Smoke curled upward, flames licking at the wood, then climbing toward her body. The heat grew unbearable, the air filled with the sharp scent of burning. Death by fire was never quick. The flames first scorched the skin, then suffocated with smoke, each breath a struggle. Margery's suffering was prolonged, deliberate, a punishment designed not just to kill but to erase, to leave nothing but ash. By the time the fire died down, nothing of her remained. Yet her death left a mark deeper than the ashes at Smithfield. For those who watched, the lesson was clear: to challenge authority, to practice forbidden knowledge, to stand outside the boundaries of church and crown, was to invite the flames. Margery Jourdemayne, once a healer, once a neighbor, ended her life as an example, a woman consumed not only by fire, but by the fears and superstitions of her age.